Hello, my name's Nicole Mysick, and I want to walk you through an example in Nextmv using the class assignment problem. So the model we're working on today solves the problem of how to maximize assignments of students to classes while accounting for various factors like the students' preferences, their costs, capacities in the classrooms, and any extended day requests that the students' families have. And so what we really want to know is, how does changing the end time of the extended school day impact how many extended day requests are granted? So we're going to go through a few different scenarios. The first scenario is, let's imagine that the school is short-staffed and we're considering ending the extended day program early in order to compensate for that staffing challenge. So we want to know, what are the impacts of ending the school day an hour or two earlier than the normal time? Scenario 2 is that we have a new honors student that enrolls midterm, and they cannot be in a class with their sibling who is already enrolled in the class. So how does accommodating this request to separate the two siblings impact the overall class assignments? And the third and final scenario that we want to address is that we have a limited capacity in the extended day classrooms. So we want to consider limiting the number of extended day requests granted, and we want to understand how this impacts class assignments. All right, so with that, I'm going to flip over into my terminal. And to address this, we're going to first install the Nextmv CLI. To do that, we can do a pip install or uv install Nextmv, and I'm going to add a -- upgrade on there to make sure I'm on the latest version, since I already have it installed. Okay, so now that we've done that, the very first thing we can do is just run Nextmv to make sure that it's loading okay. And we can see here that we get this nice help function with a bunch of different commands for interacting with Nextmv. We're primarily going to be working in the cloud command suite for interacting with Nextmv cloud applications and managing decision models remotely. We'll also be working with this init command for getting started and doing a nice tutorial using the class assignment model. And we'll also be using the local command suite for interacting with the local version of the class assignment problem. All right, so the very first thing we'll do here with the CLI is we'll run, let me make my screen a little bit bigger. We're going to run a Nextmv init. And so what Nextmv init does is it provides a series of prompts for getting started with Nextmv with a real decision model. So we'll just use our arrow keys to follow the prompts. Yes, let's go. What language do we want to work with? We'll select Python today. And how do we want to start working with Nextmv with the classroom assignment problem? And for which type of I/O content do we prefer? Today we're going to go multi-file. We have two content types supported. JSON is really just a single JSON in out. Multi-file is much more flexible, allows you to do more than one file and mixes of file types like CSV, Excel, JSON, and so on. And so now it's going to ask if we want to initialize our application template in a particular area. I'm going to just do it in the root that I'm in right now. And it's asking me if I want to start a run of the local app. Yes. And if I need to install any dependencies, the CLI will automatically do this, but if you wanted to install your dependencies anyway, for whatever reason, for debugging, you can do that, but we can just leave this blank. And then select a directory to use as the input. In this particular template, the inputs are in the inputs directory, which is the default. So we'll just enter that. And you can see here, it's using the Nextmv CLI to create a local run. with the inputs from the inputs directory. It gives me a run ID. And now it's asking if I want to get the results. Yes. And we got the results of that run. And now it's saying that the Nextmv CLI is not configured. Do we want to configure it? Yes, we do. So it's prompting us to go to the Nextmv Cloud Console, Team Settings, API Keys, and copy in my API key here. So let's go ahead and do that. And so we'll go into Team Settings, API Keys. We'll copy that API key. And then we're going to just paste it in here. And you won't see anything because it's a secret, but just trust that it pasted. And you can see here that mine did. So that configured to my Nextmv account. Now it's asking if I want to sync that local application with Nextmv Cloud. Yes. And please enter the ID of the cloud app you want to sync to. Let's sync it with an app that I have already created called Class Assign App. But if you don't have an app created, you'll just type the name of the app that you want created, and that will automatically be created for you by the CLI. So you can see here that we're doing this Nextmv CLI command to sync the local runs with that remote application on Nextmv. And now it's saying for the next step, we need an active Nextmv plan. I have one of those. If you do not, you can start a free trial on our website, or you can email support@nextmv.io. So yes, I have an active plan. Now it's asking, do I want to push the app to Nextmv Cloud? Yes, I do. And so now it's running the Nextmv Cloud app push command to push the actual Python executable that I've been running locally into Nextmv, so essentially deploying that. So while this is running, let's talk about kind of what just happened here. So I use the Nextmv init command to initialize this Python multi-file class assign directory. And it provided the scaffolding of these files. Primarily, we see we have a main.py, which has the logic for solving the class assignment problem. We have an app manifest, which tells the Nextmv platform basically what files and what dependencies go along with this application. And it also has some defined configuration, like the paths where the input is being read from and output is written to, and then some defined configurable options, along with kind of how we want the Nextmv web UI to expose those. So in the case of duration, we're exposing a slider bar going from 1 to 300 seconds in increments of 10. You can also see that we have this .nextmv folder. This was initialized when we ran that local run with the Nextmv CLI, and it provides this nice little split of, inputs, logs from the run, outputs like solutions, metrics, visuals, and so on. All right, so now it's asking, do I want to create a new version of the application? Yes, I do. So this will really kind of provide a snapshot of that code that I just deployed. And it's asking if I want to link the version to a particular instance. Yes, I will link it to prod. I actually have already created the prod instance, so it's saying, do you just want to update it? But if you don't have that instance created, it will prompt you to select yes or no to creating it. All right, so it created that instance and updated the version to it. And now it's asking if we want to start a remote run. Yes, we do. Let's pass it the inputs directory. And now it's again using the Nextmv CLI to create a remote run on Nextmv. And yes, we want to grab the results of that. So it's using the CLI to do that. And there we go. That just completed, and that was kind of a quick tutorial, we're going to dive into some of this in more detail, but at the end of running that Nextmv init, you get a view of these are all the CLI commands that we worked with so that you can kind of do this on your own with a net new model. So now let's head over to our class assign app and let's look at our run history. Now we can see here, I had a few runs already in this account, but we can see here that we have one run that has metadata with an execution class of external. This is that local run that I ran on my personal laptop, which is why the execution class says external. But you can see here, you get all of the nice parts about Nextmv, like the input, output, the metrics, the metadata, the logs, and then you get any visuals that your model exposed. So in this case, we have some nice visuals around the class assignment problem. But ultimately, this ran on my own personal machine. Now, this latest run is where we ran remotely. And so you can see under the metadata here, this ran on this execution class, which is running on Nextmv Cloud. So now let's go ahead and just click the plus sign here and clone this run. And we can select our production instance that we created. And we can do things like change the extended day bonus and run that. We can also clone this run and do things like edit the input. So I'm going to toggle use edited input and go into the raw JSON view. And if you remember, one of those scenarios was that we wanted to explore adding a new student mid-year and making sure that they weren't assigned to the same class as their sibling. So let's say that we have Yuki Tanaka and Yuki Tanaka's brother. So student 25 and student 26 are siblings. And let's say this brother's name is Newt to school. And so we have these two students. We want to make sure that they aren't put in the same class. So let's go back and edit this input more. And let's say under separations, we cannot have student 25 and student 26 in the same class. Now we can go ahead and run that. And we can even go in after the run is running, edit the run name. We can call this the Newt to school scenario and save that. And that finished, but it's kind of hard to look at two runs independently. So one thing we can do is grab those two runs and compare them. And we can look at the difference in the metrics for those two. So obviously there's one more student assigned when we have one more student, and there's some differences in kind of the preferences met and the extended day granted percentage. So we can compare the metrics at a high level between those two plans. We can also look at the differences in the visuals, and we can select from different visuals and just compare those side by side to get a better understanding of how the plan was impacted. So another thing that we can do is run a full scenario test. And so to do that, we can go into input sets, click the plus sign, and let's give this input set a name like sample inputs. And let's just grab all the runs that we made on our production instance to date. And so for me, I've got 5 runs in here. You probably have 2. So then we can go into the scenario and we can click the plus sign to create a new scenario test. And so one of the 3 scenarios I said we were going to address today is evaluating ending extended day earlier. So let's construct that scenario test. So under the input sets, we can select our sample inputs, and under instance, we can select prod. And then we have all of our defined configurations, so we can do things like play around with extended day. So what if extended day ended at 3 o'clock, as in there's no extended day? What about 4 o'clock? What about 5 or 6? And so you can see here that we have 4 different configuration sets, and those will be applied to every input in our input set. And so we can go ahead and create that scenario test, and that will fire off 20 runs in parallel. And so we can see those kind of all start to come through here, and they'll shortly complete. And then, if we want to see the individual runs and watch those kind of go through and complete, we can see them there. And all right, it looks like everything finished. So we get our nice interactive pivot table. So what did we change? We changed extended daytime. So let's look at that for the columns. And let's have a look at how many extended days we granted. And so obviously, as the time that we end extended day increases, we're able to grant more of those extended day requests. And some people had requests for later end times. And so we can see that this, aligns with our expectations, that we can kind of have more of those requests granted if we delay the time that the school ends. All right, so the very last thing I want to show you is, let's imagine that we wanted to add a constraint for limiting the number of extended day requests. So what I've done is I've actually already made a code change here to my main and to my app YAML, where I exposed a new configuration to limit the maximum extended day requests granted and have that be exposed as a slider bar. So if I wanted to just push that code change up, I could do a Nextmv cloud app push-a class assign app. And I would follow the prompts to cut a version, create a new instance. And so while that's going, I'm actually going to show you that I've already staged that example. So under instances, we can see we have this limit extended days. And so now we have kind of 2 different instances of the model that we can run side by side. And I have actually created a shadow test here. And so I can just show you the form for creating that. So if I wanted to create a shadow test for evaluating a new constraint, my baseline instance could be production, and my candidate or test instance could be limit extended days. So as I said, I've already done that. So let's click in there. And what this does is every time I make a run to my production instance, it fires off a second run in parallel to the candidate instance. And then what we get is this live view of how the candidate instance is performing against the against the production instance. And it also splits by version. So you can see I pushed up a new version in between here. So that's why we have kind of this third column. But we can do things like look at the max, the metrics for extended day granted percentage, and see that obviously when we limit extended days, we are granting a much lower percentage than if we had an unbounded amount of extended days. All right, so that covers the 3 scenarios we wanted to go through today. So with that, I will close out this video. Thank you.